Hello and welcome to Also Interesting. My name is Ali Heckelife and joining the show today is Joseph Hofer. Hi, Joseph.
Good day. How are you doing?
Doing great. Joseph,
Awesome.
You got recommended to me by Kiyomi because at CES this year, Clicks made one of the most interesting new products or gadgets, the Power Keyboard. And I talked about the Power Keyboard in my show, and then I thought just texting them if there's somebody from marketing who could talk to me. And I mentioned that I really love physical keyboards, as they were essential for me navigating phones because I have low vision, and physical keyboards make things way more accessible. And then Kiyomi told me, I just have the right guy for you. His name is Joseph Hofer. He worked at BlackBerry. He is the man when talking about mechanical and physical keyboards. And now you're here, and I'm so glad to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, it's been a long journey of working on physical keys for many years of my career, and it's always a joy to talk about it.
So when I researched your background, before you came to BlackBerry, you said you had a love for the versatility, the ergonomics, and the usefulness of wood carving tools and woodworking tools in general. And I instantly understood where you're coming from, because they evolved over years, decades, millennia probably, to have the shape of our hands and of the motion we're using them for. And I can understand how a designer or somebody with an engineer's mind who loves design gets catched by woodworking tools. Was that your first introduction into efficient design?
That's a great question. I think it was growing up on a smaller family farm. I was surrounded by tools, whether for maintenance of tractors or woodworking, tools. My uncle was a woodworker. He was close to me, and I really loved being in his shop. And I remember him making me an airplane that actually sparked kind of the love. And I was young. I must have been 5 or 6 years old. So I just had this passion for wood. And as I started with some very basic tools, in my basement there on the farm, I started realizing that my grandfather, who I hadn't met, was also like a craftsman, really interested in building things. And he wasn't just focused on wood. He was a welder. He was we have a lot of different products or things that he would have worked on, from metal pitchers to things like that. So what was interesting to me is some of this. I mean, there's simple tools like a Stanley hand plane, for instance, things like that he would have left and handed down to my dad. It was sort of the only main artifacts that I had of him. I never really met him. Like, I never met him. That never got to know him. And I remember as a kid, as I was growing up, just really holding them and imagining that he did, and it was a really nice sort of way of getting to know what he valued, I guess, and what he cared for. So then as I started using them and getting more into woodworking through my teenage years, I realized things like ergonomics made a difference from a safety standpoint, for instance. If it was shaped poorly, you couldn't use it as long during the day, or maybe it would slip off the piece of wood and not be as safe. So I think there's a really nice blend of safety, ergonomics, but then also looking at these old tools, like, they're incredibly beautiful because of the natural extension that they are of hands and of motion, like you mentioned, and then a bit of decoration on that on top, which is really quite great. So I would say, like, that did have a big impact to me in terms of what felt right or what felt comfortable to use throughout a day, or longer periods. I would also say that the tools he collected seemed to be of higher quality, and 100 years ago, like, tools tended to be of a bit higher quality than maybe we can buy today from smaller, local shops and such, right? So I kind of quickly realized what makes something feel quality and what might feel cheap or might feel inexpensive or might feel like it wouldn't last or wouldn't hold up to your use. And that sort of discernment of, materiality, quality, thickness of parts, construction, that sort of thing, was sort of developing in me. I would say during my teenage years, just working mainly with hand tools. Computers were starting to kind of come into play at that point in time. I remember my first experience was on a Tandy at a cousin's house playing some, driving games or something like this. So besides being in the shop, there was kind of a love for design or graphics and what we could do on those early computers. So I sort of had both of those passions at that point in time.
May I briefly interrupt and ask how old you are? Because on every picture I can find of you on the internet, you're looking like you're in your early 30s. And at least that's very consistent, but you can't be in your early 30s for 30 years now.
So I'm in my early 40s, I would say. And I don't know. I still feel in my early 30s, put it that way, or even late 20s, and time is passing quite quickly. And I think what's quite interesting is when people have invited me onto podcasts or talk about BlackBerry being this like nostalgic device. To me personally, it just feels like it was yesterday that I can remember so many of the conversations with engineers at that point in time, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, shaping what they were. And it's so present in my mind in some ways. So the time has flown quickly, and I'm starting to, I guess, realize that was quite a while ago, I guess.
Yeah. I interrupted you when you said computers started becoming a thing for everyday users and for first gamers and so on. But you had always these arts and crafts background, or did you ever look into development, software development, programming, and so on?
Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I if I look back now more clearly on all of that, I had a friend who helped me sort of build. Like there was a lot of build your own computers. So I learned a little bit about graphics cards and motherboards and things like this. And in some of the early ones that I used, I had built from various pieces. Put them into a case. Can't really do that as easily now, maybe, or maybe it's easier. But I guess I didn't have as strong a love for that as I did for the design piece. I remember there was a couple. What was it? FileMaker Pro, I think, where you could almost build a bit of it kind of looked like a website, but it wasn't really. So I spent time on the design of it, but I didn't really understand or figure out how to like host anything or program anything. So looking back, I realized it was always from a usability and visual and appearance and then brand standpoint. But where I was making my money in the early or late teenage kind of years was arts and crafts. I was doing a quite a bit of kind of heritage restoration, like doors, things like that, rocking chairs, just like restoring them back to new in some way, or not new, but in a usable state. Like I really loved that idea of renewing, not just replacing and throwing out. But I also would say that I started growing a bit bored of wood. It was very dusty, and I started looking into welding and other materials. I remember being in this the small wood shop I had kind of built with my dad over time. And I think the vision I just had at that point, it was like, I want to build a product that I can be a part of all aspects of it, but whether it's the design of it, the branding, the manufacturing, setting the systems up, marketing, photography. Like I loved all of those pieces, and I didn't know industrial design existed at that point in time. But when I did find out that it existed, it was kind of a really, quick thing. I saw it on a poster, just the description of that role, and it seemed to describe everything that I had love for, both the wood shop, but also computer CAD work, 3D modeling, prototyping, photography, telling the story of the product, that sort of thing. So I just felt like it was the first role that I came across that captured everything that I had a passion for. And I made a decision that day. I was like, that's what I have to do with my life.
One of the interesting things, many designers tell me that they were surprised that all their love and their thoughts and the way to express them is actually a job. And
yes. It was definitely a turning point for me. I was a bit misguided prior to that, not sure where I was headed or what I wanted to do. But I felt like, that particular role focused a lot on problem solving, right? Like looking at opportunities and solving that. And I felt that I'd always be able to benefit from knowing how to do that.
And then in preparation to the interview, there's a black hole about your biography, something, and you will sit in the BlackBerry offices with some carpenting tools, making a prototype out of wood.
Was it out of wood? So it would have been probably out of foam board. It was a modeling kind of material. But yeah, the early years, we had a prototype, like a 3D printer at BlackBerry. But I was an intern. I didn't really know how to use it. And yeah, I brought some of my own tools into the office. They had one of the spare offices set up like a little workshop. So I was carving, and I think health and safety caught wind and came over and try to shut it down.
So the non-fun department entered the room. Then you told the story that you were still covered in dust from working when you presented your first prototypes, and that they caught on.
That's true. Yes. See, I can remember this visual like incredibly well. I had a wonderful director, Frank Teneski, at the time. He hired me into BlackBerry, actually gave me my first, chance, took a risk on me. But yes, I remember the day, covered in dust. I'm carving, what at the time we were trying to look at more youthful devices and more fun devices. So they were very, I would say, a bit crazy in terms of keyboard exploration and shape and such. More active lifestyle, I would say. And yeah, he called me over, and just across the aisle there was a filing cabinet, and our CEO, co-CEO at the time, Michael Azarides, was there, and Frank said, "You're up." So I presented, to him, sketches and the models I had covered with dust. And, that was while I was, I think, a second year co-op, there. And it was really cool to see him say, "Oh my God, goodness, this is like fantastic. I love what this is all about. I think this is our, this should be our flagship BlackBerry." And not quite what I was designing, but it became a real program. And while I went back to school for that final year, I stayed on as a part-time employee and pushed that ahead. It became a program, and ultimately it did die, but it was replaced kind of with the early sort of seed of what became Bold, I guess.
I assume you've watched the BlackBerry movie that came out a few years ago.
I have, yes.
From just the movie's way of telling the story, it feels like there was a openness to rapid prototyping and the need for rapid prototyping, as planning was very, let's say, alternative. And would you, from your story, it sounds as well like there's an openness to rapid prototyping and innovation that modern or bigger companies nowadays are probably missing, because they have too many departments and decision-making levels. So when you tell the story that they said, "Oh, that's going to be our next flagship," and you're just an intern, I think that only works in a company where there's...
It's pretty flat, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty flat. at that point in time, it had definitely gotten traction with the early models that had the individual oval keys, like the 7290, that sort of thing. And that was really exploding at that point in time. But I think there was a general sense of like, what's the next season, or what's next, or how do we maintain this momentum, right? And it was pretty flat. Like Mike Lazaridis was located always near the engineering team, just because of his focus and passion for physical devices and what went into them. So he'd always be walking through and looking at what's happening and kicking off projects that were exploratory as well. But I think over time that did build into more of a system around that. Design and engineering both had sort of advanced, more skunkworks kind of divisions within them. And they were split a little bit more between like exploratory and then production. So the exploratory, departments were always looking at, what's next? How is communication changing? That sort of thing. So I had the pleasure of interacting with those teams quite a bit. I sort of straddled both teams, just because I would say being one of the first handful of core designers, we were doing pretty much everything: graphics, packaging, accessories, besides the main device. So as I think the team grew, I still maintained a strong footing in that production side, ensuring quality and excellence and fit and finish and tactility of keys and side keys, like, was maintained all the way through to the end and final touch and feel kind of approvals prior to market release, right? So I love the full spectrum of design, I would say, and believe that you need it to be excellent all the way through. Like, if you focus on just refining an idea that may not be sound, it may fall flat in the market, but it might be a perfect product. At the same time, you might focus on trying to get to the perfect product for so long that the market opportunity is passed, and maybe you've rushed then the manufacturing side of it, and it's you have return rate and failure rate and such. So I think that the two sides of design and product development, getting the product, like getting to the right product, the right seed of an idea, is really important, and then getting it right through quality and manufacturing as well.
One of the quotes you said that I wrote down in preparation: getting the right product and getting the product right. And I didn't know if it's originally from you or if somebody told it to you, but as a software developer, design is always second thought to me. I think in functionalities, and people take good design just for granted, because we are surrounded by many very well designed things, and everybody seems to have an opinion on design, but there are very few people who actually can vision a new design, a new design language.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I have to give credit to Todd Wood, who had many great Woodisms, if you will, through my time there. And he was, I would say, my longest standing, director, VP, through the years of Bold and, into Q10, Z10, Passport, that sort of thing.
Oh, so to interrupt, you were part of the Passport design as well?
So Passport was an interesting one. It definitely came out of the more advanced skunkworks kind of unconventional thinking, that was happening at the time. And I think we were looking for, a product that would reignite and sort of, be unconventional in the market as well, be more polarizing in the market. So, Jason Griffin, one of the earliest, I would say, I think, mechanical engineers, but then he was part of the design team, advanced ergonomics. I think he led that effort initially from an architecture standpoint, size of screen, that sort of thing. But I would say Passport was one, and it was one of the later products that I was a part of. It was one that was formed by a number of different hands, I would say. A lot of us were working on it in different seasons, different stages. I was able to be part of it from refining the concept. So the concept existed, but I worked with engineering to refine and maintain the icon of it, and but then also make sure it met all the RF requirements and all the battery requirements, all those things, and actually worked out all the details, and then worked with engineering to bring it to production as well. So I will definitely say I enjoyed being a part of the Passport team, but it was definitely a team effort, and too many people to mention that had a hand in that. But it was a really cool product. I loved it. Yeah.
My dad and we used several BlackBerries over the years, and by changing your phone, some old phones went to trash and recycling and so on. But I would say twice a year, he will just dig out the Passport and send me a picture, because we are often talking about the lack of physical keys nowadays, and it really left an impression. And it's one of the few tech products from an era that's gone right now, but every time when I see somebody on Reddit building new things for an old Passport, or he just digging through his stuff, we'll text about it, and it's really a connecting phone for both of us, because it's
wonderful.
The best smartphone keyboard integration that's on the smartphone side in my mind. And so I'm very happy to see, after the Passport being the last big BlackBerry phone, that there are no clicks bringing physical keyboards back. And so we are both very invested into the space of physical keyboards from two different sides of the aisle. He is writing many emails on the go with clients that need to be precise in text and can't have that many typos, and I have low vision. In my surrounding, low vision and blind people love the physical keyboards because the typing speed is way higher than with virtual touch keyboards. So the time between the last years of the Passport and now clicks felt like we were missing a product that's now finally coming back, and I'm glad you're involved in both.
Oh, so good to hear. So good to hear. Question for you: what about a the physical keyboard? Do you find makes the biggest difference for your typing speed?
So,
like, where does the virtual keyboard break down for you?
I can develop muscle memory on just landing my fingers on the letters, and then having these short internal thought of, I'm on the right key, I can press now. On a touch screen, you don't have that feedback. And if you're using VoiceOver on an iPhone, you'll land your finger in the broader area of the letter, and it will tell you what letter it's on. And then you shift it to the side to be on the right letter to text it. And due to the design of digital virtual keyboards, whereby one letter pressed, the next possible letters that are most likely will have bigger hitboxes, it's harder to navigate with VoiceOver to these hitboxes because they aren't in the same shape of the keys on your desk on your display anymore.
I see.
You have to deal with keys that are shifting in size while you're typing, and if you're then changing between languages, typing in German and in English, it's a total nightmare. It got better for time nowadays. On the latest iOS, it got worse to the point where people are saying, no, it's not you, it's actually the software. And when your smartphone is part of the way you communicate with the world, you want to have reliability on the direct interface as long as it's not a brain to computer interface. It needs to be dialed into my fingers, and physical keys are reliably there every time. They aren't changing in size, they aren't fluctuating, and that's the important thing that got lost by having more screen estate to lower. So nowadays I would say Apple is relying on autocomplete, and we see where that's going. So we need to bring the interfaces back. And on that front, clicks, I had the clicks case for a short time. Somebody rented me to fiddle with it, and it was too big. It had the problems the BlackBerry Priv had for me. I used it for some time. It had so for those who don't remember the BlackBerries, the Priv was a full screen smartphone you can open by sliding out the physical keyboard below it. So it was always in portrait mode, and you would add your physical keys below it, and therefore it became quite top heavy, and the clicks case was too top heavy for me as well. But now with the communicator coming up and the power keyboard, the new Clicks products, I think they might solve the problem.
That's great feedback. Thank you. Yeah, on the note of being top heavy, you know, I think when I first saw the very first prototype and such, like I had the same kind of concern. You know, there is a weight that was added into the base to kind of give it more balance in your hand. I think it also is held differently, or wants to be held differently than a BlackBerry, the way it's cradled and such. But I have found, just from my experience, I'm using the I think it's a 16, but just the Pro, not the Max. That over a year, I think it was about a year and a half or something that I've been using it. And there's been a few times I've taken it off just because we're traveling or whatever that might be. I didn't really need the keyboard case. And I've found, like, my experience of the phone, and I'm not sure exactly what it is, just feels a lot muddier. It feels slower. It feels, my fingers are, you know, in the way because they're on top of the screen all the time. And I'm losing, you know, all of the shortcuts that I've set up. And I didn't think that would be actually a, you know, as big of driver, but, you know, I don't have to look at the screen as much. I can just activate things that I do on, you know, in my routine, whether it's disarming alarms or things like that at the office. I just come in and it's like, I just hit a couple buttons and it happens, you know, and the alternative to that would have been jumping into an app, you know, a few more taps, backing out of whatever. And it just felt muddy and slow. So I've put it back on, you know, I quickly put it back on because I just, how it's changed me and my behavior over the year. I like my phone better with the clicks on it than off of it, which is very interesting. And I'm not actually bothered by the height anymore. It is a little bit tall when I have it in my back pocket and I'm sitting down, but that's the only case that I feel like it's big. And what's interesting is it being a little bit larger like this. Like I'm just becoming used to having a larger screen for all of my communication, you know, apps that I'm in, right? So like I whether it's an email or you know, Slack, things like that, I can quickly see the history or what I'm working on a lot clearer, and it feels like I'm more I don't know, maybe more capable or something, or more aware of what I'm working on. And yeah, so maybe just need to give it a little bit more time, but it's exciting though to talk also about Communicator and how we've you know, offered and are creating something that you know, appeals to those that maybe find that the Clicks accessory is a bit large for them as well, right? So
to be fair, I always used it with a Max iPhone because low vision, therefore more screen estate. And then it's really a bit top heavy. But I can see the point for the not Max ones. So the Communicator markets itself as the device for those who have a smartphone, but they want to have their important communication, conversation, all work-related stuff distraction-free on one small device with a smaller screen. And honestly, it feels like bringing the things I loved about BlackBerry back into a new device. And I see why people nowadays are used to doom scrolling and their screen estate and don't want to have it as their main daily driver. But for me, it would perfectly replace most of the things I do with a phone.
Yeah, and I think you know, from a marketing angle, we've had some kind of questions around, like, what does this mean from a companion device or second, you know, phone? You know, does it connect to my primary phone somehow, or does it act like a slave? That sort of thing. But you're right. It is a primary, like it can be a primary phone. It's a fully fledged Android phone. It can stand alone, but it comes down to who is using it. You know, my wife, for example, like she doesn't have social media on her phone, and you know, WhatsApp, texting, Slack, those sorts of things, communication apps. It would just be like it's perfect for her, right? As a primary, you know, play Spotify, like the things that she needs a phone to do is perfect. So I think for many it will be a primary phone, but I also think, like, you know, the way we've positioned it as similar to like an SLR or let's say a mirrorless camera or an SLR, if that is needed in your kit or your you know, your role, you're not going to rely on an iPhone for that. You're going to pull out your secondary you know, product that is better at that particular task than, you know, the iPhone is, for instance, right? And we're just trying to be the thing you reach for if you're wanting to respond quickly and feel in control of communications, right? As opposed to looking into, you know, what I kind of refer to it as an everything phone, where everything gets dumped into it, whether it's your home smart, you know, temperatures, and like everything is sort of speaking to you almost the same loud, and it gets very messy and confusing. And I think that's where you can start getting lost and lose time, lose focus, and where we really feel kind of this return back to like an intentional product. You know, you think about what you want to do, then you go do it. As we've suggested, by using the Niagara launcher, right, which is more list based than just sort of a messy app grid kind of layout. So it kind of flips it from a reactive device telling you what you should look at to more of an action device or something that you're you know, thinking about what you might need to do next or want to do next, and then it's the right tool to then go do that.
On the behalf of low vision people, accessibility features on the communicator, will there be talkback or so the default Android text-to-speech assistant, or are you relying on something self-made?
Great question. I can't speak too much on the software features. I mean, it is like it is currently full Android 16 support for many years beyond that. So whatever you would expect from that, you know, it should be present on Communicator. One thing I will mention is the prompt key on the side. It's our way of adding more audio interactions and inputs to the device. So you have, you know, keys from a physical, you know, typing, texting standpoint, but maybe audio is better for certain situations. So if you're in a text field and you press and hold the prompt key, like you can just speak your words, let go, and it fills it out, you know, similar to like WhisperFlow and some of the other kind of technologies out there. You know, a double press could do something. A long press could be set up to, you know, launch an AI agent or something like that. So more audio based through that key. And we're working on, you know, what that vision might look like in generations to come. But really think like it's a great, you know, great form factor and archetype for text, for audio, and for appropriate sort of display, so, you know, size for the more communication centric use case.
And having Android 16 and your option keys on the bottom, I think one should be able to set up shortcuts for repeating messages like on my way and so on that can be
totally
texted.
Yep. I have that actually set up on my Clicks keyboard. So when I leave the office, I just hit one key or two keys, whatever it is, and send my wife a message. Yeah. One thing that, you know, speaking of the option keys at the bottom that you might appreciate is something that was actually a character trait of BlackBerry's as well. If you look at the bottom kind of corners, we have the very bottom row somewhat staggered in between the rows above. So they're not perfectly grid-like. Mm-hmm. And what that allowed us to do is create kind of an ability to find, enter, and shift. It was sort of at an outside corner, and then below that, the 1, 2, 3 or the alternative character keys are set inwards, but they're also another corner. So we essentially have 4 corners that can be easily found without looking, compared to a lot of other keys on the market. QWERTY keys that just stack very much in a grid-like way, and end up with just the outside lower corners, right, for affordance. So
just from looking at the power keyboard, the add-on, the sliding keyboard for everyday iPhones and so on, I would say I see at least 8 points where I can navigate to tactile. So you have the bumps on F and J that are used for blind typing on everyday keyboards that are here integrated as well, which is perfect to orientate yourself without looking at them. You have, due to the chin that's getting thinner, you have the outer edges of the lowest row. You have Shift and Enter, as you said, being the corner keys at the bottom, and the smaller number keys on the top, they are entry points for themselves. So I just from looking at it, I would say I can imagine myself being able to type blind on these. So
amazing.
That's one of the features most of the other keyboard case developers don't have in mind, because you're looking at your screen to type, so you can look at your keyboard to type, but I don't want to rely on my vision.
Yeah, I think that's that's a great point, and actually very much a driving factor for me as I help shape, and for all of us, I guess, in the Clicks team, as we shape keys. I think designing something that works for someone like you, for instance, makes it better for everyone, right? So the number keys on Power Keyboard are a different shape because we wanted to signify that they are not a QWERTY key. They're they're not the typing keys, so you can kind of feel that. And sort of a similar DNA on Communicator. The QWERTY keys are taller, more vertical in nature compared to the bottom row, which is easier to access, easier to find. But we wanted to prioritize the ability to type right with the larger keys above, and segregate or separate in some ways, create another affordance there. And then further to that, I mean, for most of our keys on the accessories and also Communicator, we've introduced this very slight dipping surface, slight scalloping, I guess. And what that does is highlight the corner of the key that is kind of ideal for where your pressure points and your nerves are in your thumbs. So when you feel them, similar to the F and J key, and then press down, you're kind of rocking from that very fine control or fine touch of finding that key to when you press, you're using more of the pad of the thumb below it. And that actually aligns, sort of at a 35, 40 degree, out to the bottom and right for each key, in kind of a butterfly, effect, or a mirrored effect from a center line. And that helps create a much, also wider or greater distance between keys if you weren't looking at it and just feeling it, compared to all the keys having a flat top surface, which I've noticed a lot of the phones on the market today kind of just seem to use like more of an Apple desktop or laptop keyboard feel. But I mean, they can get away with that, and that can work well because of the size, right?
Just from the accessibility point of view, I consider the Power Keyboard more thought out. The Communicator, with its pill-shaped and not marked keys, so F and J on the Communicator aren't distinguishable. I think one would get used to it because muscle memory and physical keys worked out well in the past for me. But just by intuition, I would say that the keyboard on the power keyboard is more user friendly if you have low vision or if you try to type blind.
Mm. And is it just because of the two dots, like on the F and J?
I would say they are an important part to it.
Yes.
Just having distinguishable keys. And on the communicator, you have the numbers and so on as well printed on the buttons, so you don't have separate number keys. Therefore, it needs more orientation, something one can get used to. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I have to press down the number key in the bottom left while I'm pressing the numbers?
Correct. You can also double tap or double press the 1, 2, 3, and that locks it into like an alternative character lock, similar to a caps lock. Oh. So if you're doing a phone number, you can just double press the key and then type the phone number in.
Oh, I have to stand corrected. There are 2 number keys on the communicator, so I can hold down with my right hand while selecting the number with the left.
Yeah. That was easier. That was one nice thing we added. And I will say that we've been considering with and without the F and J bump, and likely reintroducing it or adding it for production as well. So I wanted to make mention of that.
So that's very, very great to hear, and I can't wait to fiddle around with it, because you're coming back to I would say a niche market. That is quite a big niche, to be honest. So I know so many people who are missing their BlackBerries and who are looking for anything that will bring them the best of both worlds. The iPhone, for example, as you mentioned, there are too many things crammed into it. I would say it's more like comparing a multi-tool you can carry every day with a toolbox you have in your cabinet for special uses. And I would consider the iPhone the multi-tool, and I carry a separate multi-tool with me every day for valid reasons. But when I really try to get work done, the multi-tool is too small, too finicky, too fiddly. So I'm relying on real tools, and the communicator feels like a real tool.
That's great. It's hard to build a house with a multi-tool.
I imagine someone tried, but
yeah, and I think what's also a little bit deceiving, just through what you see online with reviews and such, and not having it in your hand is the size difference. So this communicator product held next to let's say a BlackBerry Bold or Q10, it's quite a bit larger. It's actually closer to the original 7290 in terms of width. And when we look back at those devices, they had individual separated keys, connected with a web. And I don't think they actually had any like surfacing on them or anything extra, but they were amazing, amazing keyboards. Over time, as we were trying to cram a QWERTY into the smallest device possible or more feature phone like size, that's where keys started, being pressed, I guess being pushed together, and that web in between was removed, and that is what led to the ergonomic surfacing to help bring some of the separation back when the keys were all touching, right? But what we have here is now like relaxing of those constraints because of the context around us. Pro Max in the market, even Pro Pixels, like large phones, and this next to them feels small, but this next to where BlackBerry was 15 years ago feels large. So some of the constraints around even a square screen, it might visually look like, oh, it's not as usable or it's not usable, but in reality, it's actually quite large, that display, and the keyboard is very roomy. It would feel more roomy I think, than a lot of the BlackBerries we've done in the last 10 years of phones that were launched.
On the risk of losing some of the audience right now, but you're probably the best person on the planet to talk to about that. The keyboard of the Q10, I used it a lot, and I highly value that every keycap, due to its orientation and its surface with the bent edge, every keycap was unique to the touch. So I really developed a feel for the keycap due to the position of my thumb and the way the curve on the keypads was oriented. So
amazing.
The Q10 was probably the most accessible physical keyboard I ever typed on, because you on one of the problems, if you're reliant on touch and you're working with computers all the time, I have some thicker skin on my fingers in the most useless places for feeling small bumps on things.
Right.
But the Q10 had a keyboard that was easily usable if you're blind or have low vision. And I remember that probably back then it was just a design choice, but it clicked with me. I don't know if that's a proverb in English.
Interesting. Yeah.
It really worked for me, because you had an individual feel for every key. And I understand with products like the Communicator, where most of the pill-shaped keys are just the same keycap with a different print, they won't have the same individual feeling to them.
Yeah. So are you referring to the Q10 or the Bold 9900?
So
because I think the Q10 had the same keycap for all of them, because it was like horizontal frets,
had the
right?
Q10, and when I look at the Wikipedia page of the BlackBerry Q10 right now, you have the edges on the top right and top left corners of the letters. I'm pretty sure that's the one I used, and I got used to the keyboards.
Just having a quick look. Yeah, because most of those would have been the same key. Maybe the outside key is slightly different. But the reason I ask is the Bolds had either a trackball or a square track pad in the center, and to sort of maximize the space, we had a curved top fret that separated the keys, and then it was a less curved bottom fret. So each key was a different shape completely. But I think Q10 we lost that because we just went to touch screen and then the straight frets.
But when you look at the Wikipedia picture, I assume it's right, because all the other pictures coming up when looking for the Q10. So it fits my memory that they had individual keycaps. So
interesting.
Both sides,
I don't think they did.
the left one and the right one, they had the same keycaps, but due to its orientation, the curvature of the individual pads was, due to the point where you grip them, unique.
Interesting. I wonder if, what I wonder is if how your thumbs changed from the top row to the bottom row, because you're obviously more of an arc kind of motion, that they feel like the ergonomic surfacing feels like a different angle because of how you're moving around the keypad and gripping it. That likely could be what is happening there. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
On the trackball, that was one of the features I never really got used to. I understood that it was useful, but at the time I had my first BlackBerries, they already had a touch display that was good enough. So,
yeah, no, I think if you really love the Q10, that you would feel a similar kind of like tactility or difference across the keys on the Communicator. I also think that them being spaced further apart and much larger, I think building muscle memory and that being even more accurate in finding keys will be improved from the Q10 as well. Yeah.
By losing probably half of the audience by geeking out on an old BlackBerry keypad, I would just briefly talk about the right now the existing aftermarket for BlackBerry keyboards. I think you're aware of people building their own LoRaWAN communications device, Meshtastic devices, and so on, by buying the old BlackBerry keypads on AliExpress and other vendors. So people always loved and used their keypads, and I'm so happy to see them coming back. Do you think there are other features from smartphones from the early stages that will come back?
Yeah, great question. I think there was there was an era of, I think it was called Nextel, so push to talk, kind of walkie-talkie like features on the side of some of the BlackBerries and also other feature phones and such. It was a little bit of an inspiration for our prompt key, truthfully, and I think that would be a really great way to use that key if there was an app that made sense to use as more of a walkie-talkie.
I can totally see push to talk with an AI agent.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the thinking there. We didn't want to be too prescriptive as to what that key had to be, but allow for individual decision or choice at some layer as well. Yeah, I mean, maybe not so much feature, but just talking about the kind of chin or space below the keypad. If you look at a lot of the BlackBerries, we did have enough affordance at the bottom of there to hold the phone, to place your thumb in that location, to kind of act like a lever, so the phone didn't fall out of your hand, right? And I think what happens today when a lot of QWERTYs or even touch devices are sort of shaped to maximize, specs and maximize kind of screen size, that sort of thing. Those features are often dropped and pushed aside. If you look at a book, for instance, a hardcover book or a soft book that you're reading, there'll always be space on the sides, and that's where you put your thumb really to hold it open, right? Now that's obviously different now that if you read on Kindle and such, but that's sort of the thinking there. And one thing we did, I think really well here on the communicator was we brought a bit of a raised feature to that bottom area as well. And when you hold it in your hand, like it feels almost like a hook. Your thumb has great kind of traction or like grip on it, and can even kind of pinch at the chin area.
Yeah, I see there's
and hold the phone upside down.
Lip on the chin.
Yeah. So these little subtle things, very hard to communicate, through marketing images and such until you just get it in your hand. But I worked really hard with a lot of 3D printing, a lot of thoughts as to how every surface on the product could be maximized to kind of fit your hand better. And this kind of does a full circle back to where we started with those small affordances from tools that just allow it to feel like an extension of you, and you feel just a bit more confident, a bit more safe, with it as well. So
I can't wait to get my hands on it. And
amazing.
On that said, we're running out of time. Thanks for Clicks for organizing this meeting. And thank you, Joseph, for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I would love to have a second conversation with you when I had the chance of using the Power Keyboard for some time.
Oh, for sure. That would be, that would be great. Thank you for inviting me on, and all the thought you put together in the research and questions. It was a wonderful chat. Thanks again.
Thank you for your time, and auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.
Bye.